Hello, friends. Wildly of Wild Fempire here, and I'm bringing in a new and delightful frequency for all of us. This is a dark moon medicine video, so I'll be offering these each month at the dark moon to help create a field between us of what energies are present, what we might be experiencing collectively, as well as to help show you the rhythms and the practices that I do personally to help align myself with the moon, with the lunar phases, with the rhythm of the magnetic polarity, so that we can all begin to play in this juice together. So happy dark moon. Here we are. The dark moon is happening today, right now. And we will be feeling these effects for a few days and have been feeling them moving up to this. But the way I like to look at the dark moon is like a poignant moment in time where we are being invited to reevaluate, to really review what we've got going on in our lives, and to take stock of how all of those choices and experiences and relationships feel. How do they feel to us? What sensations do they bring up in the body? Are we feeling in alignment with our dreams and desires? Are we feeling in alignment with our relationships? Are we being met with reciprocity? Do we feel as though we are receiving as much energy as we are putting out into the world? That's what the dark moon represents for me. It's a time to come inward and to take stock, because we are dynamic animal beings that are constantly in movement. There is a momentum and an energy that is always flowing through our channels, that's collecting data from the environment around us. And we are in turn responding to all of that information, all of that energy, all of the stimulus and experiences and the ways that things are changing, right? So to step in to this lunar way of being in the world, of being in our bodies, is ultimately a permission slip for us to change. It gives us permission to change. It gives us permission to lean into the chaos of change without resistance. We can allow our bodies to age without feeling so much resistance. We can allow our children to grow up. We can allow relationships to ebb and flow and sometimes come to closure. We can allow death to move through our experiences and be with it in presence rather than pushing it away or being afraid of looking at it and talking about it until it finally comes our time to die. In creating these deepening relationships with the moon and her phases, we begin to experience an embodied relationship with cycles and initiations. She is a real gift that allows us to put these changes into a good place in our psyche. In the same way that this beautiful planet Earth is, we can watch the seasons move around us and start to build a deeper comfort with change, the inevitable death of all things, and therefore the inevitable rebirth of all things as well. So, in my personal practice, as we step into the dark moon, I often will step away from the tarot and step into different ways of divination. And so, what I was called to today was to pull an archetype card and to dip into the bowl of bones to see what wanted to speak with us about the energies around this particular moon cycle, this particular moon phase. Generally, there are 13 dark moons in a calendar year, and ancient peoples tended to track time more in this lunar based way. Our current calendar is quite a different creation with its moonths of different sizes and lengths that are not necessarily based on things that we can see externally in our environment. So, just inviting you to consider that. What might time feel like if we were tracking it by watching the moon? How might that soften our minds and the way that we experience time? Would we feel less pressure potentially if we were watching a clock that was in the night sky as opposed to one that was attached to our wrist? These are just curiosities to take in and see what they arise within you. So, for this moon cycle, the dark moon medicine that I'm feeling at this time, we received the archetype card of soul work. And I've actually been feeling this for a number of weeks, this leaning into our soul work. And for myself, all soul work, it has a relationship to our boundaries. The definition of soul work for me is finding that purpose, that unique frequency, or that unique thread that only we are designed to see and carry. It's our unique perspective. It is our unique way of seeing the world and interacting with life. You know, we each carry our own innate wisdom in our bodies, in our bones, through epigenetics. We each have our own unique ancestral lineage. We all have something to share in this world. And it is each individual's duty to embrace this possibility if they choose to, right? Like, we also always have free will. We don't have to engage in soul work, nor do I think we're all meant to. I don't know. I don't know if every life is meant to dig in deep and find that wisdom that is theirs to share. Perhaps sometimes we have lifetimes where we are invited to feel the opposite, to really experience not going deeper, and that's okay too. I trust that if you're here watching me, that you're on a journey where this message is really calling to you and that you can feel it in your body. And so for soul work to occur, it requires each individual to really own their holy boundaries and give the efforts necessary, practice the disciplines necessary to unplug from the conditioning and the programming that we all have received during our lifetimes. The programming of our educational systems, the conditioning of our families of origin, the conditioning under the particular governmental systems that we might be living with, the conditioning of the particular environments that we live in, or the stories that we've been told about how to control those environments instead of learning how to be in relationship to those environments. It is an unlearning process to be in our soul work, and it requires strong, healthy, holy boundaries, which are challenging. It's challenging to know ourselves deeply and to find those boundaries and then to uphold them, to use our voice and own what those boundaries might be for ourselves. It requires efforting and courage to engage in the practices that allow us to give voice to our boundaries and our soul work. It is not necessarily the easy path. And so, as we are here in this Cancer dark moon, Cancer being the sign of going inward inside of our crab shell, really allowing ourselves to get intimate with what's on the inside, this inner territory. You may notice a feeling, despite it being July and all of these invitations to go out into the world, you might notice a quickening inside of yourself, a desire to be alone, a desire to be near water, a desire to feel yourself, to feel in, and to see what arises. So this is the call forward of our soul work this month. And from the bowl of bones, what has come forward to support us in this month, we have here the coffin bone. And so if you are unfamiliar with four-legged animals that have hooves, so horses, deer, elk, cows, etc., moose, they each have what's called a coffin bone. And this is the bone that's at the very end of their leg bone that connects to the hoof and allows that connection between bone and gristle and muscle to the foundation of the hoof, which is made more of a similar quality as our fingernails. And so for me, the coffin bone always offers the message of what are we rooting into? What are we using as our foundation point between ourselves and the external world? And so as we felt here with the soul work card, again, I'm getting this message of our boundaries. And boundaries not in this way of being a hard wall, of pushing things away, but more of these inner boundaries, these choices and ways that we move that are ours, that are within our power, the ways in which we choose to feed ourselves, the ways in which we choose to move our bodies, the ways in which we choose to be in communion with others or not, the ways in which we choose to expend our energy and to use our time, our inner boundaries. And as I touch this coffin bone, I'm really sensing that question, that curiosity. What are we each actively rooting down into as our foundation? What are our foundational practices? What is keeping us honest with ourselves and in our lives? That feels like the medicine of this dark moon. It feels like what we are being invited into this month, to get real curious about what that is for us, to acknowledge the places where we may have stepped off the path, which is fine. We do it all the time. There's no shame or judgment. This is not about perfection. It's about process. It's about process. And life is a spiral. It is a spiral dance of moving into discipline and into presence and out again, constantly shape shifting and being pulled in all the different directions, and choosing choosing in our integrity to come back to center, to root down into what is true for us, and to reactivate our efforts in support of our own truth. That feels like the dark moon medicine for us all this month. I truly hope that it serves you well. I would love to hear how this activates in you, what it calls forward in you, what you are thinking about, what you are committing to, what you are in devotion of. Please let me know. I would love to have this conversation with you. And until next dark moon, take good care. Bye for now.